On today's episode of the Connection Codes, we are going to be talking about grief, processing grief, how you can come alongside your partner who is experiencing grief, and just what that looks like for someone. And I think it's going to be an emotional episode. And so I think everyone experiences grief at some point. So even if you're not in it right now, I think it's important for everyone to listen so we can really partner with those around us that are hurting. So with that said, welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. I am your host, Tara Wages, and I am here with Dr. Glenn Hill, who is a clinical sexologist, marriage and family therapist, and his incredible wife, Phyllis. And together they founded the Connection Codes, which is the guide to human connection.
Hello, world.
Hi, friends. So, we always talk ahead of these episodes about what we're going to talk about. And I shared recently on a podcast about the anniversary of my mom's death. It's been 8 years, and definitely processed sadness on that podcast. And, it's interesting because even in talking about grief, and because I have walked through that with both my mom and dad passing, and I've also lost a sister. My oldest sister has already passed away, and then a niece and nephew both died of cancer. So, it has definitely been something in my family. I've also lost other friends and acquaintances, but, closely to my family. And, when this topic comes up, and we were just in California, and we had an opportunity to talk to someone who was at one of our events about her mother passing, and that it's been quite a few years, but she has, what she says is she just shut it all down.
Yeah.
She shut it all down when all of that happened, and she hasn't grieved. And, in talking about this topic, it's like for so many of us, we don't know how to grieve. I think we're not taught how to grieve. And often the way people respond, especially initially, I think can really set us up to not grieve well.
Yeah.
It's those comments. I know for me, my mom died when she was 90. And so often people would say, oh, she lived a good long life. Like that, then kind of put a judgment on it, like, oh, okay, so I shouldn't be sad because she lived to be 90.
Yeah.
I should be happy, joyful. And, what I realized back then was I only get one mom. And at the time, I was just 52. And so for me, it's like I wanted her to be around until I turned 90.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't ready. And so when people make certain comments, well, she's no longer in pain, or well, she's, in heaven with Jesus. And it's like those comments, for the way I experienced it, was it put a judgment on my sadness. Like, well, how can I be sad? That's so selfish. She's now in heaven with Jesus. Like, oh my word, I'm a horrible person. And it's like, wow, that sets us up so much. And it's almost like we don't know how to sit with someone in their sadness. And so for years now, I feel like I've heard that over and over, almost kind of like, well, I don't want to ask you about your mom because I don't want to bring sadness.
Right.
And so then no one asks me.
Yeah.
No one even reminisces old stories with me because they don't want to trigger sadness. And it's like, I'm already sad. So matter of fact, I would love it if you would just come in the room with me and sit in it and go through old pictures, or, just like even initiate that. That would mean so much. But we are so awkward in it with each other that we don't always know, like, well, I don't want to make it worse, so I'm not going to bring it up. And by not bringing up, there's such silence in it. And, I know I try to be mindful of other friends who have, well, specifically lost someone significant, like a parent or a sibling, or a spouse. And I put it in my phone as a reminder.
Yeah.
because I know what that day is like. Matter of fact, I was just with a dear friend yesterday. Her mom's anniversary was 10 years ago, just this week. And, I know that just out of my own story, it's now been 8 for me. It's the whole week before. It's the anticipation of the anniversary.
That's good to know.
That it's like, man, and with technology, pictures pop up. It's like, oh, Facebook is reminding me all these really special pictures. The last one with my mom, and so it's almost like it's just right there, And with my dear friend yesterday, she said, yeah, the whole week before has been, a lot of remembering. And I think that we also think there's a time limit.
Yeah.
Like there should just be a time limit. Now, my dad has been gone now for 35 years. So do I feel the same magnitude of sadness that I did the day he died? Absolutely not. And, are there times that he passed away on September 1st? And, are there times when that date comes and I don't even, the week before, I'm not feeling it? Yeah. 35 years later, I am. I don't feel it the week before like I do with my mom. And, there's the day of, I know it's the day, but I don't have that same experience. So maybe that is the thing about time. There does come time, the pain is less. But in talking with this young woman last week when we were on the road speaking, and she shared with me about her mom passing and that she hasn't allowed herself to grieve. And part of it is because I know I can relate to this. It's like you think, I don't have time right now because what I'm thinking is going to happen is I'm going to lose it.
Yeah.
And I don't have time right now to lose it. So it's almost like we think we are supposed to schedule it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's not true. And for her, she was thinking, I know someday I will. And it's like the damage this is doing to her body, because she's really shutting herself down. I mean, even her husband knows that she has shut herself off to feel anything about anything, because she can't open the door to emotion, because then she feels that she's going to be flooded over the sadness of losing her mom. And, even with us talking, like she doesn't allow herself to cry because of that. I know one of the sentences was the closest she would get would be to say, my mom was my best friend. And, and then it's almost like that one sentence, and then she slammed the door shut again. And I was just, as we were talking, and I said, because when I would say, I think you're thinking it has to be a weekend retreat, where the whole weekend is simply a grief retreat or something. And she was shaking her head like, yes, I don't have time for that. So someday. And of course, she has children that are at home, and I believe she homeschools. There's so many aspects of her life. She's like, I can't do this right now.
Yeah.
And to realize that's actually not even truth. Truth is you process the sad in the moment. You say, ooh, I'm getting hit with sad. And that you have relationships, I mean, if you're married, prayerfully it would be your spouse, and even depending on your children, I mean, for you to just be able to go, ooh, feeling sad today.
Yeah.
I thought about, my mom, and she loves Christmas, and it's that time of year. Every time I see a tree, I think of my mom. And to be able to just start realizing that that's releasing a little bit. And it's just the releasing of the little bit that is so, so healthy.
Yeah.
And it's like we resist that with each other too often. And sometimes with grief, there's a lot of mixture of emotions. It's not always just sad. It can be guilt. It can be shame. It can be anger. Like there could be so many things that are connected to the thing that you're grieving.
Right.
And to realize, wow, I need to process all of those, that it's not just sad. And, for me, just specifically like with my mom, through the year that she was dying, every time I'd go see her and I'd spend a week, there was more and more of her that was already gone. And so when she actually passed, there was a great relief for me. Well, then I felt guilt that I felt relief. And so then I just had to really wrestle with that. I had to process through the fact that I'm feeling a lot of guilt, that I'm actually relieved that she is gone, and there was a sadness, but a combination in all of that. So that was confusing to me. Like, I definitely, with my dad, it was a very different experience. Part of it is because I didn't live anywhere near. I wasn't able to go see him as much as I went and saw my mom. I only saw him maybe once or twice between the time he was diagnosed with a brain tumor and the time he died. And so I didn't feel any relief. I just felt an explosion of hurt and pain.
Yeah.
And like my body reacted in magnitude of that. And there was not, I'm so thankful he's not in pain anymore.
Right.
There's not an ounce of that. I was just blown away by that experience. But with my mom, it was very different.
Yeah. I think that that's really helpful for people that are on the other side of the grief to hear, because I am fortunate that, I haven't lost an immediate member of my family other than a close grandfather, but I've been walking recently with a lot of people that have been experiencing a lot of hurt through death and loss. And so I think it's really a strange place of knowing what to do, how to help them process, how to sit with him in something while also not being able, we talk about being a fixer, and that's a huge part of connection coding. Is like, you don't have to fix everything, but this is something we literally cannot fix. And so to hear you say that the remembrance, just being there to remember with them is so helpful. Is really good to know, but then also just not feeling, I think we feel like we have to fill in the gaps with words that are actually more damaging than helpful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And what's happening scientifically there is, we now know this just watching brain scans, whenever I see another human's pain, I'm coded to experience that pain with them. And we've all done that. You see somebody, fall down and scrape their knee and your body reacts. Well, you didn't fall down and scrape your knee. What do you care? Well, when it happens, one of my least favorite scenes in movies is, somebody's on a train and the other person, their loved one is chasing them on the platform, and then they slam into a pole, and, your whole body just reacts like, oh my gosh. Well, number one, it's a movie. It wasn't you, but we feel it. We're coded that way, and we're not doing it on purpose. We just kind of cringe. I deal with a really high level of trypanophobia and things of that nature, that whenever I experience visually a wounding of someone, it's overwhelming to me, and I literally can pass out from that. So what happens is I see Phyllis's sadness, which is a pain experience, while I feel pain. Well, now she has become a pain source. Whenever I'm looking at her, seeing her pain, experiencing her pain, I experience pain as well. And so typically what we want to do is to fix that as quickly as possible.
Right.
The message of pain is there's a problem. If it's hurt, the message is do something immediately. The message of sadness is something's damaged or missing. And so we want to fix that instantly. And so the quickest way to do that is go, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Your mom's in a better place. She's out of pain now. Phew, there, we did that. And I'm thinking literally it took 10 seconds. Well, no, actually I just shut her down. And so it's difficult to sit in the pain with the other person, but that's very much the need in that moment, is for me to be able to be present with her in her pain. And the byproduct of that, the corollary, is she's supposed to process this pain incrementally. And what we do instead is it builds up. And now, as you mentioned, your friend is thinking, well, I need to get away on a retreat so that I can cry for 3 days about this situation, whatever the situation is, but, with the loss of her mom. And so we're not coded that way. Babies don't do that. If you watch babies, they don't schedule a meeting with their parents once a week and unload. Well, no, they do it exactly when it happens. And they don't do that because they're smart. They do that because they're coded that way. They convey instantly, even at 3:00 in the morning. Well, there's no birthday where that coding changes. So for Phyllis to be able to process through the pain as it happens, and every time it happens. Her mom loved McDonald's coffee, which is, I don't like coffee anyway, but I'm thinking McDonald's coffee, surely not. Sorry, McDonald's. But she got a 10% discount. So it was well worth it. And I don't know if she really liked McDonald's coffee or if it was just the discount. I'm not sure. But so now, and of course, McDonald's are everywhere. So often when Phyllis sees a McDonald's, she thinks of her mom. So this is this ongoing nudging, this reminder. Well, she's hardwired. She's coded to process through that pain. And there are times, we'll be driving along and she goes, "Oh, I just thought of my mom." And I go, "Oh, what's happening?" She goes, "Oh, just sad, 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 sad." I'm like, "Oh, what's happening with that? What am I missing here?" She goes, "Well, we just drove by that McDonald's." And I thought about how many times I went to McDonald's with my mom and we drank horrible coffee together. And I just loved it. It was so special being with her. And she processes it through. And again, literally, we're 30 seconds in. And it doesn't matter. I don't care if it's 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But usually that just processes very, very quickly. And if it happens again in 10 minutes or 20 minutes, that's fine. But it's amazing to me how quickly and how efficiently and proficiently it processes for her because it's not dammed up. And if we did not process it, and that's what we call the emotional dam, it's going to get dammed up. And it will come back at some point and drown you.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Tira, even the way you were wording, like, I think it's good to know how to grieve well, but I love what you were saying, that this information is also really, really important for people who are trying to show up for others who are grieving.
Yeah.
And to kind of know, and I think, wow, even in the wherever you were brought up, like, I think we have certain traditions, like right now, I know you are heading to a funeral this week yourself, and you were saying that it may all be in one day, or it may be that the night before is the viewing, and then maybe the next day will be the funeral. And so we were just talking about this, that, we have certain traditions where, just even that, the viewing, and for the people in the moment that are closest to those people, I don't know that they remember who came, who didn't come. Like, there's so much in those moments that you're so overwhelmed with the grief that it's like you go through the emotions.
Yeah.
And as a support, you're going, well, like, I know you want to go partially for your own, because it's helpful for yourself to be able to say goodbye to a friend. But then you also want to go so that you can support your other friend who's the family who's really grieving. But it's also, it's not a package deal. It's not like, okay, I did all of that and I'm done. It's like those people, matter of fact, it's the weeks later, it's the months later where it's those reminders, it's those moments of, hey, I was just thinking about you, or I was thinking about your son, or I was thinking about your husband, or, whoever has, like, to let other people know, hey, I'm still thinking about you.
Yeah.
That's so important. But I think we, we forget that in those moments, they're so surrounded and there's so much busyness in it. It's like all the tasks have to get done.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's like that alone is not enough. It's like we really need to show up for each other and to ask and to be able to say. And I do think, though, if you're that person that is grieving, you've got to show up and tell people what you need.
Yeah.
That's really huge, because people cannot read your mind and they cannot know for you what you need.
Yeah.
Yes. I've talked to my mom about this recently because we've also had a death in our family over the last few weeks. And, I love what Dr. Glenn says, though, that when you can't distinguish emotional pain for physical pain. And so I know at one point I was really struggling, and Wes was like, well, I was trying to get her to get counseling. And you said to him, well, she was at the bottom of the stairs. Her legs were cut off. She can't help herself. And so I told my mom, I was like, she can't tell you what she needs right now. You need to show up at her house and take care of her, And so I do understand that, it would be easier for you just to tell us, yes, help plan food or whatever. But oftentimes I don't know that in the moment they actually can even vocalize.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that. I think when it's in closest to the traumatic event,
Yeah.
absolutely. You show up, you sit for hours and just be there.
Do dishes.
Do
clean.
dishes,
Yeah.
cook a meal, like absolutely you show up. When I'm talking to the people who are grieving, it's more down the road.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
down the road, just like even for me, like recently, the anniversary of my mom's death was last week, and this point it's 8 years out, and if I need to take a day, I need to tell people, I'm just gonna take a day. I just
Yeah.
I want to go through. I brought home several boxes from my mom's after she passed, and I really haven't opened them. I have opened the box. I've not gone through the box, and if that becomes a need for me, I need to communicate that. I need to say, hey guys, I'm going to take a half a day off, or I'm going to take a few hours, and I'm going to go through my mom's stuff. And would you come and be with me? Because at this point, I don't know that anyone would think of that. Most people close to me don't even know there's a box.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I was referencing, is that as time wears on, you need to let people know you're sad. You need to say, wow, I'm really, and even the day of, it was October 20th, and I texted my kids because I'm not even thinking or expecting them to remember. And so I wanted to communicate, hey, I'm feeling a lot of sadness today. It's been 8 years since Oma died. And then for others, close friends, I was also sending that text. And, it's just, I don't want to sit and then feel hurt that no one texted me.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm going with that.
Totally.
That in time, I need to say, hey, I'm feeling sadness because of this, instead of feeling hurt that no one remembered for me kind of thing.
And my great fear is, as far as just the other layer of that, is that we've established an atmosphere where people are not supposed to convey the grief. They're not supposed to convey the sadness. And I don't know what the heck they're supposed to do. I officiated a funeral some years ago for a family friend, and her son was murdered. It was a horrific, tragic scenario. But even as I was at the funeral service, leading up to it, the mom was sitting in the front row, and she was just weeping and wailing, and she was audible. And I was startled at how many people came up to me and said, don't you need to go do something about that, to get her to stop being too loud, so loud, vocal. And I thought, isn't that bizarre that like we think that I don't, and I think I don't remember if I oohed the people or what, but I'm just like, no, I'm not doing anything. She is doing what she's supposed to be doing. And people are like, what? Don't you need to go console her or something? And no, she needs to have safe space and time just to wail. And that's it. But that was so culturally unacceptable that this is just a weird thing that shouldn't be happening. And we have to do something about it to something, shut it down, alter it quickly, because this woman is, bubbling over with sadness. And so we need to fix it.
I'm feeling some concern, I think guilt, and I'm so glad you clarified, because I do want to say, when someone passes in that moment, show up.
Yeah.
Like show up. And I know that at times we are hesitant because we think, oh, there, plenty of people are bringing food. Plenty of people are at the house. Plenty of people are circling around them. We assume. Sometimes it's that we just assume with a good heart. Sometimes it's like, I don't want to go sit in that pain. I don't want to hear them wailing. I don't want That's a lot.
Yeah.
And totally get that and process that, but go show up.
Yeah.
Like go and I remember when mom died, we my siblings and I were there, and no one thought about food at all. And all of us were coming in from out of town. I had one sister that lived in the town with my mom, but we were all coming in from out of town, capable to, I guess, call, DoorDash. No one thought of food.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no thought of food. And all of a sudden there was a doorbell that rang. And my son-in-law's mother, who didn't even live there, she happened to be in town. And she brought all this food.
Yeah.
And she didn't ask. She just showed up. And it just washed over all of us.
Yeah.
It was such a beautiful act of love for us because, and most of the people in the room didn't know her.
Yeah.
She was my son-in-law's mom who happened to be in this small town at the same time. And I know that she knew what to do because she's gone down that road herself. Yeah. And so she just showed up with catered food and just left it. She didn't stay. She didn't try to, she was very, in a sense, respectful because she knew she didn't know other than, Glenn and I. Well, Glenn wasn't there. He was in Portugal, but she just knew me.
Yeah.
But it was such an act of kindness. And, it's to this day, I remember it so clearly.
Yeah.
A knock on the door, and we all kind of looked at each other like, who would be knocking on the door? And there she was with all of this food.
Yeah.
And it was enough food, for us for days. So we didn't have to go anywhere. We didn't have to think about it. We could just be quiet. And, that was very special for us to not have to leave the house and to just be there and, to be loved like that. And so I think that, there's times when you just realize, wow, I just need to show up and do something.
Yeah.
And, I know that there's even times when obviously acting quickly is helpful.
Yeah.
Like the urgency of the matter, I know sometimes even in people showing up to say, hey, I'm just here to clean your house because I know a ton of families about to come in. And I just want to do this. I just want to clean your bathrooms. I just, I'm going to clean out your fridge before all this food gets here. Kind of, there's just so many little acts of kindness that just shows I love you, I care, and I just want to do something in this moment.
Yeah.
That can be so huge.
100%. Can we talk for a second about the partner? Like your partner who is now in the trenches with you, because I've seen this a lot through friends where it's, the wife that has lost, their parent, or the husband that's lost their parent. And just the dynamic in their relationship becomes uncomfortable because one of them can feel like they're not a part of the equation. It wasn't their immediate parent that was lost, or they don't know how to help their partner cope. What are some things that partners can do in those immediate moments? And then what can they expect after? Like, how can they actually come in alongside someone and partner with them?
Well, I mean, I think I missed on a tremendous number of things over the course of our relationship. I did this pretty well, just being present with Phyllis, even, the 30-something years ago with her dad. And she basically cried every day for about a year. And what was interesting is we were in a very, very, I don't want to be too unkind, but just a very brutal cultish group at the time who basically told her to stop it and said, you just need to decide, did your dad go to heaven or hell? If you went to heaven, rejoice. If you went to hell, there's nothing to do about it. So get over it. And I fortunately somehow was able to not totally, fall into that. And so I was just present with her. And this is way, way, way pre-connection codes for us. And then with her mom, that's when the connection codes were really gelling. And I was much better at just finding out what was happening with her in the moment. And actually tried to, as part of our narrative, is she would say, I don't have time to be sad. And I'm like, babe, I'm not trying to get you to be sad. You're already sad. And I want to be present with you to be able to process that. And it was amazing to me even watching her. And this is one of the early case studies, just watching her. She would process the sadness in a minute, in 2 minutes. And again, that didn't mean it wasn't going to happen again in 20 minutes or an hour or this afternoon or tonight or tomorrow. We'll just process it then as well. But I would watch her when she would finally let it come in, and she would just weep. And I would just sit with her. I was just learning to ooh real well and to be able to ooh her. So I think that's a huge part of it. Certainly oohing, but also the 3 phrases go, oh, wow, yeah. So what else happens for you with that? And we call it following it till the end. We don't know what the end is, but we know it when we get there. And to just be present. And then to ask the 4th phrase goes, so babe, what do you need? Which usually the answer to that is nothing. I just need you. I just needed this. I needed your presence, your safety. And that, for me, learning to ooh has been so powerful that I don't have to fix. I just have to be present with the person.
I think that, we're all different. And I even think about how I grieved with my dad versus how I grieved with my mom.
Yeah.
And with my dad, the crying, and Glenn did, he just held me and I just cried, which was super healthy.
Yeah.
And it was, I think Glenn was so in tune with even what do you need? Like just, and for often, I just remember even just now saying it, I can just visualize like laying in bed, just crying. And he would just lay beside me and hold me and I would just cry. And
Yeah.
there was no words. I just remember crying, and then with my mom, it was so different. I didn't cry. And I didn't want to cry, and I didn't want to feel that kind of pain again. And I, as he just said, I would say, well, I'm just too busy to be sad. Like I don't have time. And, that was not a healthy thing.
Yeah.
That was not the way that all went down was not healthy. And I think that, for those of listeners that may have a partner who is either not grieving well, like I would say with my dad, I grieved better. Like the crying is such a release
Yeah.
of all of that. And if you're a partner now and you're listening and your spouse or your partner is in grieving mode and crying, just hold, yes, don't fix, don't try to cheer up. You can ask things like, what do you need? They may say, could you just watch a movie with me?
Yeah.
Can it be a comedy? Or they may say, can you go for a walk with me? They may be able to express that, but don't try to fix and don't try to assume, if they'll just, XYZ, they'll be better. And just know that, in time, they will cry less.
Yeah.
Or you may have a spouse that's grieving the way I was grieving with my mom, where it was like, I don't want to be sad. I don't have time to be sad. And that even that requires a lot of patience just to make a space for that. And, I think that the connection codes, just the 3 is so powerful. The ooh, what's happening, and even to be like, I think I've missed something.
Yeah.
To being able to acknowledge. And part of all of that is to get your spouse that's grieving to slow down for themselves. And in that slowing down, for them to go, oh yeah, what is happening? And then, the 4th phrase of what do you need is, it's like, I'm not sure what I need. It can be the answer, but to keep asking, because at some point it's going to be, you know what? I just need, to go for a walk every day. Like I need to get outside. I need, there are practical ways that we can make space for grieving, like for ourselves. And one of them is to get outside in fresh air, to get outside and walk, or to get outside and sit. Like there are practical things. And so I think the number one thing, if you're walking along beside, don't try to speed it up.
Yeah.
Don't try to fix it, and don't try to make it better. but allow the space for whatever the stage of all of it is. We go through stages. There can be a stage where you're just angry, so angry that this has happened to
Yeah.
you. And it's like, yeah, don't judge that. If your partner is in that stage, don't judge that. Don't tell them not to be angry, or shouldn't be angry, or why are you being angry? Like, no, 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 no. Just know that's a part of it, and there's just different things. And if, I say there are some good books out there. If you feel stuck, then because you don't know how to partner with someone, you don't know exactly, I don't know, I feel like I don't know how to help. Okay, then read some books on it so that you educate yourself more, you understand more. But a lot of it is just allowing the person to grieve. And that means you just sit with them. Do not rush it. Do not try to put a stamp on it like, well, it's been 2 years. Is this going to be now the rest of our lives? It's like, well, maybe. And yet that they didn't ask for that. I don't know that any of us chose to lose a loved one.
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, that was my choice to lose my dad and lose my mom and lose my sister and lose my niece and lose my nephew. No, I wouldn't have chosen that at all. I prayed for a miracle for all of them. So, like, I didn't choose that.
I'm so glad, though, that you just said the 2 years, because I think that for so many of us on the outside of people's home, we see people grieve initially. Because a lot of people keep their grief, it's so personal and it's so quiet. And so I think that when you're in the thick of it with your partner grieving, you're like, whoa, this is now going on for a couple of months. I thought we would be better by now, because you didn't see your neighbor down the street, the grief happening inside their house.
Right.
And so then you think, this is the rest of our lives. Like, we are broken. And how long is this going to last? Because when you're in the thick of it, just like early days of parenting, they say the days are long, but the years are short. Like when you are in that grief moment, every day feels like a year. It just lasts forever. And so I think it's such a great reminder for people that there's not a time frame on it, and that every initial first is big and hard, and not just the day, but the anticipation even of the days, and to just be able to sit with each other in that and remember with them just the power in that is so incredible.
Yeah. We always say there's not a statute of limitations on any emotion. So a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, 10, 20, I don't care. And of course, the problem with our culture is we let emotional dams build. And then now it's an explosion. The person's already flooded, and then the dam bursts. Whereas if we process it through just first time, every time, anytime, all the time, as instantly as possible, process it through when it happens. But again, it doesn't matter if it happens again 10 years from now, because there will be things, I assume, the rest of our lives together that where Phyllis will get hit with pain, with sadness about her mom, about her dad. And I'm never going to say to her, no. We're past that point now. We're past that statute of limitations. You're not allowed to feel pain about that anymore. Which, once we frame it that way, everybody's like, well, duh, of course.
Right.
But we often don't think of it that actually what we're doing is saying, no, people, it's been enough time, whatever. It's been 6 months, a year, 2 years. But that's not how humans function.
One thing that's important to remember, if you've not been through that, let's see, I'm trying to say it backwards. Like, for example, my children have not lost their mom and dad.
Right.
So they don't know what it feels like to lose their mom and dad.
Right.
And so when I am grieving or thinking about my mom, it's a sadness that my kids can't relate to. So they're not thinking ahead going, oh, this is the week before. I bet mom's really sad.
Yeah.
That's not, it doesn't even compute for them in that way. And it's almost one of those, and I think I've shared this before, like I personally never had any miscarriages, where our oldest daughter, Echo, has. She's able to sit in that grief with women who are going through a miscarriage in a very it's in such a deep way
Right.
where I don't have that experience and I don't know what that feels like.
Yeah.
And so it's that understanding too. Like now, even in me saying this, I realize that when my mom's mom died, I don't think I showed up for that at all. Like
Yeah.
as far as
Yeah.
I was a kid when my grandmother died or my grandparents died. I didn't even know any of my grandparents. And so I definitely wasn't aware of my mom's grieving. I don't remember her grieving. I don't remember her talking about it. I don't remember her mentioning it. And so even in that, I wasn't taught in that sense about grief.
Yeah.
Like I never saw it. And so I think too, to realize, this is again, one of those topics we're not really taught how to grieve. We have cultural traditions, like we have a wake and we have a funeral. So that's more of a tradition, but I don't know that we see people mourning openly
Yeah.
in our society. And so we don't know really what that looks like. And there's other cultures where they mourn very differently.
Yeah.
Where they give it's a lot more of a public showing of the mourning and sitting in it for a much longer period of time.
Right.
And, so it's kind of like, oh, we really do need to talk about this topic because a lot of us just really, really don't know.
Right. Well, and there's also the expectation to be strong. Like you get a badge if you do a good job. If you're not wailing in the front row of your son's funeral, well, then people can say, well, she's being really strong. She gets a badge for that.
Wow.
And that's something I've struggled with a lot. And hearing people say that phrase is, oh no, they're really strong or they're okay. And I'm like, what are they supposed to do? Go put their head in the oven? Like how do they prove to you that they are actually not okay? What do we have to do? And so
Wow.
I think a lot of our language that we use around grief is so damaging and is so hurtful to those. And we often say it because it makes us feel good about it. The other person on the other side of the grief. And we think we're doing a good job. We think that we're being helpful, but in reality, it's really harmful because we are not taught how to just sit and be silent with each other. And so I think that I'm really glad that we have talked about this because I also know that we are still very much in a nation and in a world that's still experiencing a lot of grief from where we've been over the last few years. There's been so much loss. And we all think, well, no, you should be better now. We should be through this now. That was in 2020. That was 2 years ago or 2021. But people are now probably processing shame because they're not through it yet. They're not okay. And so I think it's just so important to talk about. Thank you for sharing your vulnerability. And what I'm really hearing is show up initially. Someone can't tell you what they need because their legs were cut off themselves, know, and so show up in a respectful way, drop off the food, give a hug, and then don't try to speak peace into them because that's not the time for them to hear it. Instead, just listen and help them remember, just say, either like a positive story, something you loved about that person, or I'm thinking of you. Weeks later, I'm still thinking of you. I'm praying for you. And then leading up to anniversaries, mark the dates in your calendar and send those reminder texts and just ask, how can I help you? What do you need from me?
Yeah. So good. So good.
So do y'all want to close by doing a core emotion wheel? And if this is your first episode listening, a core emotion wheel is our proven tool that bring connection between, you can do it in a group, but really right now it's going to be between two people so they can understand what is happening for the other person. And it just kind of lets you in so you can really meet each other in your grief when we do an issue specific wheel, but in whatever it is that you're experiencing.
Well, would you do the wheel with me?
Yeah.
Tara?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So my will, I did, I'm about to go to my fourth funeral, this week in the last 6 months. And, so yeah, I can definitely do that. I'm going to pull it up cause I like to look at it. But you can
Do you want me to start or do you want to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so for me, I would just because this whole podcast has been about grief, I would love to do
Yeah.
an issue specific wheel just about, my own grief. And so I'd like to start there. So for me, yeah, definitely a ton of sadness of, losing my mom. And I think about, when people would say to me, well, she lived a good long life. And I responded and goes, you know what? She's the only mom I ever get.
Yeah.
So I'm just, and people never knew what to say after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hurt. And I think that in and around that event, I think there was hurt in just the my family of origin and kind of the loss of what could have been versus what was. I think there's anger in that as well. And just my parents didn't know how to nurture us as a family. And so we all left home and just really left.
Yeah.
And, so the majority of us showed up for the wedding, but it was like we were, in a sense, strangers telling old stories. And so anger.
Funeral.
Did I
showed up for the wedding?
Oh, wow. Yeah, not a wedding. It was a funeral. Guilt and I wrestled through guilt of just feeling relieved when it was all done because of just the logistics of how to take care of my 90-year-old mom who had lived on her own forever since my dad died, and the logistics of how do we care for someone who is losing all of their ability to care for themselves. And so, I felt guilt around all of that, felt shame in just in we had always said we would take care of her. She would live with us at the end, but the end came too soon. I was still working full time. And so I think I felt a lot of shame and guilt even around all of that, that never happened. And I always promised her it would. Let's see, lonely. I think even more recently, the day of my siblings, I was the first one to acknowledge. We have a sibling text thread, and I was the first one halfway through the day to acknowledge that it was the day, and I felt lonely in that. And I don't know if they were not aware, or if it's just we're so kind of distant from each other that there's very little communication. But definitely felt that loneliness. Let's see, fear. It's interesting because I expressed some fear to our son and my daughter-in-law just during that time, which was last week, that I have fear that when I get old, that I will, if Glenn dies before me, that I will be alone, that my kids won't want me to live with them. So I really got hit with that fear just around all of that. And I know it kind of all came up because of the anniversary of my mom. And let's see, I'm totally lost in where I am. Joy and just being able to talk about this. Because I know it's a topic that most people don't talk about.
Yeah.
Did I cover them all?
Yep. I was counting on my fingers. For me, I have anger that bad things happen to good people. Out of the 4 funerals that I've attended, 3 of them are relatively young people. This week he's my age, and I'm really angry because we try to make sense of it and say, well, everything happens for a reason, and that's just not true. There's no reason for this to have happened. And I have anger in that, that I have shame because the physical distance between me and the people that I'm closest to in my life. Wes and I moved cities. And so most of our close people are further away, and I have shame that I can't just be there with them to walk them through their pain in the way that I want to. I have guilt. I've been wrestling with guilt that my life is good. And I have guilt about that. I really struggle that, that I'm like knocking on wood now that I have my parents and my siblings and my husband and my children, and we're all in this moment healthy. And I have guilt for that. I have fear because every day I wake up and wonder if this is the day my parents are going to call and say my grandmother's passed. We're not waiting on my grandmother, and she's 94, but every day it's like, well, she's not doing good today. So I fear for when that phone call is going to happen. And sad that I don't see her as much as I should right now, again, which ties into the shame of just logistically not being close to her. And I feel lonely because, what we talked about today and just not knowing what to do in those moments, really wanting to show up for those people that you care about and show them you love them and that you're with them. But I know they feel lonely and we feel lonely because we feel like everything we're doing is wrong, and not knowing what to do. I feel hurt for the people that are hurting. I really, you mentioned you feel that pain, and I deeply, not especially, but for my aunt who lost her husband, 2 weeks ago, and now for my friend's mom, who I adore her. I hurt for her very, very deeply. And I feel joy. I feel joy that we're having this conversation. I feel joy that that we have time right now. And what I've tried to remind myself this week is like, I get one chance to live. And so I need to make every single day what I want it to be, which then can turn into guilt too when I don't do that. But I have joy that I have today, and that I don't want to waste that day. And so, that's where I'm at.
Wow. Thank you, friend.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I think that if you're walking with someone, especially your partner, it is imperative that you do this with them every day, that you get on that same page and that you can partner with them in their grief and give them the opportunity to get it out of their body, because they may not be able to do it otherwise. But when you put this wheel in front of them, they can. And so thank you for listening. Share this with your friends that are hurting, that have a partner that is hurting, so they can know how to come alongside them. And if you need more information, you can find all about us at connectioncodes.co online. And we're here.
You need this.
You deserve this.
So let's do this.
Let's do this.